It's the Morning Brew with Elle Dawson and Gillian Robertson. Brought to you by Fight Bananas.
Good morning, everybody. We already got some people on the live, some people in the comments. Yours truly, Elle Dawson, and to my left/right, the savage Gillian Robertson. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm good. Dave and I were both kind of like, I think you felt the same way. We didn't have like super high hopes for this card, but in typical fashion with some of these events that lack name value, we end up getting some pretty banger fights, right?
Oh, yeah, there were some banger fights and some people that just really stood out. I feel like that really, like Andre Lima, for example. Never really noticed him as much as I did last night. Looked very just well-rounded. I feel like he's going to be a problem for that division.
No, 100%. He went from the guy who got bitten to an actual contender in this flyweight division. And yeah, if a single fan says something negative about the female fights from this weekend, like they just weren't watching. Like who I did not have two female knockouts, first round knockouts to start off the card on my bingo card for this weekend, like by any means.
And like, I don't know, Carly Judy's really stood out. Again, someone who actually, we talked about her last night. I actually have watched her fight before. I just didn't remember. It was a fight that she lost, actually. It was on her Contender Series fight because the chick that she fought is actually one of my friends. So I'm like, I remember that fight, and I remember it was an absolute banger. And then to see her come out with a performance like that, she just looked, her nickname's Crispy and lives up to it, absolutely just crispy on the hands. It looks so nice. And then going to the next fight, I literally was talking to Dean about it all week where I'm like, how is Priscilla still signed? I'm like, she's 5-6 in the UFC now. She was 4-6 in the UFC and has a history of not like missing weight, eye gouging people, things like that, doesn't have the best history. I was like, how is she still signed? And then after her performance like last night, I'm like, that's why she's still signed.
100%, because how often do we see female fighters putting away girls with their hands like that,
No, exactly. I'm like, just look at, I guess, at the track record. I was like, I don't know. Why does the UFC keep her around? But like with performances like that, being able to drop girls, like she was out. It wasn't like a TKO. She was flatlined on the floor.
That was wild. And like Josiana Nunez is just like, I don't know why I'm such a huge fan of hers. I watched her debut and she fought, do you remember, what is her last name?
Malecki.
Yes, Bea Malecki, who's like 8 feet tall. And Josiana Nunez looks like she should be fighting at 115, but just like decided to be a bantamweight for the night and just absolutely annihilates her. And I was like, this girl is like, this is my girl. She's my spirit animal. And I'm such a big fan of hers. I think she's incredibly tough. So for her to put her away like that in such a scary fashion, I think is, like you said, that's why she's still signed.
I feel like they both were kind of fighting a very similar fight. Priscilla just had straighter shots, where Nunez was coming with a little bit like wider shots and was getting caught down the middle more, and obviously caught up the middle in the end. But the 1-2 for Priscilla was really landing just straight. I feel like the fight only lasted like 3 or 4 minutes, but I'm like, for the whole fight.
Yeah. No, 100%. And my question for you is somebody who's fought Priscilla, and we've watched her, in the flyweight division. And I know we have our opinions on some fouls that she's made in the past. But do you feel like her primary issue before is that she was in the wrong weight class? Because she definitely looks at home at 135. Like she's definitely big enough and she has the power. Do you feel like she can do better in this division, essentially?
It very well might have been. When we fought, I know she missed weight. I think it was by 2 or 3 pounds she missed when we fought. So, and like, it was definitely not an easy cut for her, I guess. So, it may very well have been a problem, just a big issue. And I feel like a lot of fighters do, I guess, fall into the trap of like, I have to be bigger and stronger, so I'm going to cut the weight. And it's like, why not just rely on being better?
Yeah. And she does have power. So maybe we see her carry her power a little bit better at 135 when she's not depleting herself with this massive weight cut. So I'm interested to see what they do next with her.
Oh yeah, exactly. And even at 125 though, she had a bunch of exciting performances too. Even I remember her fight with Molly McCann. Like
Yes.
Molly ended up winning it, but had an eye that was like had to be a broken orbital or something. Absolutely huge. They were both like talking shit during the fight. Just a fun fight to watch, you know?
No, 100%. Super tough girls. I might have to go back and watch that one today. Another one I'm going to have to go back and watch again today was the women's strawweight fight. Because when I watched it in the moment last night, I actually did have Luciano winning the fight, which is a rarity for me, scoring against the girl who's primarily trying to grapple. But I gave Luciano the first and the third. But the first round was pretty close. And obviously Sam Hughes dominated the second round. So your thoughts, how you scored this fight?
It's such a tough, like, I feel like it really goes up to, well, two things. It goes up to the first round and it goes up to, one judge gave a 10-8 on the second round.
Yep.
So it's like, do you score the second one a 10-8 and who do you score the first one to? So I think, like you said, the first round, it was like first half very much controlled by Sam, second half very much controlled by Luciano. Feel like typically speaking, in judges' mind, the second half of the round sticks out more. So I had it with Luciano winning 1 and 3, but I am also not mad, I guess, that Sam won. I'm like, it was such a close back and forth fight, and she absolutely dominated the second round. I don't know if I would give it a 10-8, but she was on top position the whole time.
So I want to play devil's advocate here with you guys because I'm kind of on your side where I felt like Luciano clearly won the first 2 minutes of round 2 and Sam Hughes clearly won the last 3 minutes of round 2. So I guess my question for you guys is, how can you score the first round, which was razor thin close, right? And the second round, where there was a very clear winner, and Sam Hughes really did dominate, almost finished her a couple of times in that second round. How can both those rounds be a 10-9 for Sam Hughes? Like, I think this is just an issue with scoring in MMA in general, where we can have a really, really close round where we just have to pick a winner that gets scored the same as an unbelievably dominant round. So maybe, like, should we be giving more 10-8s?
I guess that's been like an argument in judging a lot lately is like, I don't know. For me, I think you really have to earn a 10-8. Like, you have to do damage. You have to really be like, I don't know. I think it's obvious when there's a 10-8 for me. I'm like, whenever somebody's just getting beaten for a round, I'm like, okay, that was definitely a 10-8 round. But most like that one, I wouldn't have given it. And like you said, maybe it's an issue in MMA scoring overall. Maybe there should be like a possibility to get a 10-7, you know, like maybe there's a middle ground. Like, I don't know. But yeah, for the way it is now, I don't score that round as a 10-8.
And I agree with you. Absolutely. I think, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I think maybe we need to give more 10-7s. Maybe what we consider a 10-8 right now should be a 10-7 and a more dominant round. Like, because it's so crazy to me that we can score a round where it could go either way, the same as a round where there's a very clear winner. You know, it's kind of odd. And it might actually help us have less draws and more clear judging if we gave more dominant scores. But, you know, that's a conversation for another time. Had to change from lunch to brunch to accommodate your daylight savings commitment. Heck yeah. Let's go. It honestly, daylight savings wrecks me every time, especially the losing an hour. We were not okay that week, guys. Just so you know, please check on Gillian and I.
I never know what to, I didn't, last week when we did the show, had no idea it was even daylight savings. I was just like, why am I so tired?
This sucks. Well, you used to have to change your clock. Now I just am like pleasantly, I guess unpleasantly surprised when my microwave timer or clock doesn't match my phone.
I know, that's what happened to me. I was like, what is wrong here? Why are these not the same?
Did I lose power last night?
Had to Google it.
It's bad. We are, like I said, we are not okay. We are still not caught up on our sleep. We're getting there. But I just, this whole card, the whole prelims, to be honest, were just absolute bangers. And I feel like we talked about Carly Judice. We talked about Priscilla Cachoeira knocking out Josiane Nunez. We talked about Andre Lima briefly, But I have to give some flowers to Daniel Perez for just like being literally the toughest dude I've ever seen in my life.
Well, that's what almost made me more impressed with Andre Lima, is that he found a way to finish regardless. He saw that, all right, this dude's tough as anything. He's going to keep on walking forward on the feet, doesn't care, took him down and got the choke. And I'm like, it was just an impressive performance all around, I feel like, for Lima. But gosh, that dude is tough.
No, unbelievably. And honestly, like, what a record at 125. Like, what is he, like 17-7? Like, that's a ton of fights and a ton of experience. And Andre Lima's 11-0 now. I'm loving watching some of these young flyweights. We just interviewed Josh Van a couple weeks ago. By the way, the Josh Van fan base is like just awesome. I didn't know that was like a thing. And then we were interviewing Francis Marshall a few days later, and we had just random people pop in the comments like, yay, Joshua Van. And I was like, love to see you here. So we love that the Joshua Van fans are in the house. But watching Joshua Van, watching Andre Lima, like, just gives me so much excitement for this flyweight division, where it has been a little dry for a contender for a while. And now we have Tamirov. We have these guys that are coming up. So I'm just really, Josh Van is my man. Told you they're here.
No, from Lima too, it was just like you saw the redness on the body, like the way he was attacking the body. He had a huge well on everything. He was attacking the legs, body, head. It was like mixing it up so well, and then just being able to like put the cherry on top with the jiu-jitsu. It was like that was probably the top performance of the night for me. But just going on to say about flyweights too, the Tough House just released this week and is starting next month with flyweights and welterweights, I believe. Yes. So that I believe it's May 27th is the start date of that. So
they're trying to build this.
They're gonna be coming in.
I love it. And honestly, guys, if you guys haven't seen some of the people that are on this season of Tough, like they have incredible records. I'm really glad that the UFC is kind of doing this international Tough season, because I think what tends to happen when they just do it in the US is it's the guys that haven't gotten signed, right? So the guys that they really, really, who have the experience and that they really want, they're just going to go ahead and sign them, or they're going to get on Contender Series. So it ended up being people with less experience on the American seasons. And some of these guys have insane records for not being signed to the UFC. So I think it's going to be a really good season.
And just shout out one of my main training partners, Roy Echeverria. He is on it too. So I'm super hyped to watch him.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, let's go. No, it's going to be really good. I'll be honest, my favorite season of Tough ever to watch is the flyweight tournament. Like, do you remember when they did that? Like, Tim Elliott, Brandon Moreno, Kai Kara France, Pantoja, literally just legends of this division were all on that season together. So I think it again. I
think it's fun to go back and watch like Tough, like 3, Tough, like those ones, just to see. Even Tough 1, their original idea was to make it like almost like a Survivor type thing, where they did like game show they did like they had to do like games and tasks and also fight while they were there, because they didn't really know like the general idea that they wanted for the show. So they had them do like all these weird challenges, and they had to focus on cutting weight and fighting each other.
And also a lot of people were drunk.
That still happens, I feel like, in the Tough House. It's still they provide the alcohol.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that. But season 24. Black Zillions versus ATT. That's a great season too. That is. Yes. I heard I think it might have been Pitt's wife told me they tried to do like a Real Housewives of MMA to like go with that, but there wasn't like any drama. So it was really like dumb and boring, and it didn't work. They like tried to do a reality show with the ATT wives.
Yeah, I don't honestly like being in the Tough House, and every person I've ever talked to says the exact same thing. They're like, it was one of the best and one of the worst experiences of my life. I'm like, there was so many times when you're at the gym, like I had Justin Gaethje as my coach. I had 7 other girls there who want the same thing as me. So who are working hard, down to like do whatever, get the rounds in. And then you go back to the house and you have no phone, no music, no TV, no books, nothing. And you have to sit there and stare at a wall and just think of something to do. And it's like, those times are just like I don't know, they kill you mentally. You're just sitting there the most boring times. And then you're like, I see why everybody gets drunk in the house.
No, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a reality show. It's not there to be the best environment for athletes by any means. I didn't actually watch the show, but I did see that they had, I can't remember who was in it. Was it Piotr Jan?
Yeah, it was Jan and Aljo.
That's right. Yeah. Which I think would be really funny, to be honest, because they have the weirdest squashed beef ever. But I honestly should go and watch it because I bet it's very entertaining. Because I've talked to some of my Russian teammates about this, and Russian MMA is another world. It's not even the Russian UFC fighters. I don't think they respect Russian MMA as a whole as much, because there is a lot more it's a lot more like a reality show. They want there to be fights at weigh-ins and to have these insane moments. So it's kind of a spectacle there.
I was going to say, anytime I'm scrolling Instagram and I see a video that's just something wild, I'm like, this has got to be Russia. Always. It's always a Russian MMA promotion that's doing a huge, I saw when it had to be a 400-pound woman versus a tiny guy. And I was like, what am I watching here?
It's either Russia or Japan. Japan's doing some wild stuff too. Usually their pro wrestling is what's insane to me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The craziest one I remember from Japan was when Gabby Garcia fought the pro wrestler over there. And it was a real MMA fight, and she was jumping off the ropes like she was doing pro wrestling.
It's wild. Our world is wild. I love it. Oh yeah, I bet Roxanne was great to have in the house. She seems like just the nicest person ever.
Honestly, I love all those girls. It was just a good time in the house in general. I feel like there wasn't really any drama. Shauna Dobson was probably the light of the house. She was the honorable, she was part of the other team, but allowed to be on our team too. Kind of went between both teams, because she was just a great person, the life of the house, the personality. We had Rachel Ostovich, Montana De La Rosa still in the UFC, Lauren Murphy. We had a good house. It was just a lot of good girls, and there was no drama really,
Yeah. It honestly, looking back on that season, I feel compared to the women's strawweight season, it was a lot more chill for sure.
So we asked the Tough producers when we were there, we're so what season did you hate the most? Just working with. And they said it was the women's strawweight season, the first season with the women's strawweights, because they said that they hated each other so much that they just made the living situations terrible. Whereas if in our house, if somebody left a little bit of mess, we were all adults and mature and be oh, I'll clean up and make sure the kitchen's nice and whatever. We took care of everything, where they're one girl would be mad at the other girl, so they would just leave a mess for the other team to clean up, and just trying to get back at each other, and it was just so toxic and volatile there. They said that was the worst season for them.
No, that's so bad. I've heard some stories from that season that I don't know if they're true or not, so I'm not gonna be quoted here live, but I've heard some nasty things that people did to each other. So I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm glad you had a much more positive experience, because I can imagine living in a house with nothing to do. Honestly, if I were in the Tough House, I would, because you can take religious texts, I think is the only thing you can take. I would probably just deep dive Bible study, because otherwise I'd go insane. I feel you'd go crazy.
There was one girl in our house, I can't remember, I'm probably going to mispronounce her last name, but Karine, I think it was Gevorgyan. She was Armenian, didn't speak any English at all.
Aw, poor
so I'm for her to be in the house, I'm I could only imagine. She can't even talk to us. It's that's the only thing to do. She can't read. She can't watch TV. I'm can't even talk. And I guess that's a shout out to Roxanne Modafferi there, because she used to be a English teacher in Japan. So she helped Karine learn a little bit of English while she was in the house.
That's awesome. Yeah, that would be terrible. So now, that's the one thing you can do is hang out with each other, and you don't even have your Google Translate.
Yeah, exactly.
So rough.
So her translator would come to the gym and help Justin Gaethje translate what she needed to do, but she wasn't able to come to the house. So it's at the house she would just have nothing. And it was just so, I can't imagine her experience.
Yeah, no, me neither. That's rough. But that's something I would not choose to do. I think it would be really, really tough. But I am definitely excited to watch other people do it. That I will do. Let's go back. We got to go back to this card. Obviously, we can talk more about Tough as the season comes out. Imagine putting a bunch of bloodthirsty psychos in a house with no internet. Can we talk about Jiu-Jitsu debut? What is Jiu-Jitsu?
He fought AJ Cunningham.
Oh, okay. I got you. That was like a show. I was like, oh, okay. You Su Young. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Dude.
Yeah. An amazing grappling performance for him. Just like good control. AJ Cunningham was working like almost a jiu-jitsu game on bottom more than just trying to get up. Like he did almost have, a triangle in the second. I believe he almost had another submission in the third, where it's like he was close with these, but needed to use them to be able to get up, to create the space. He was just almost too comfortable to stay on his back and work there. And jiu-jitsu was able to control the fight.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think we saw kind of a similar issues with Kurt Hollabaugh on the main card, where when he finally made the decision to work up against Alexander Hernandez, there just wasn't enough time,
As with Kurt Hollabaugh, as the commentators were talking about him, you could just see, like they're saying that he was like, when his UFC debut, I believe, was like 2013, and like he's a vet of the game. He's been around so long, but you could see his style just kind of looks like that. He looks like it, like they said he's a boxer wrestler, and I'm like, a boxer jiu-jitsu guy.
Yes,
he looks like a boxer jiu-jitsu guy. That's it. I'm like, it looks like that's where his skill set is limited to, where that worked in 2013, but now it's like you need to be more well-rounded. You have to have everything. And it just looked like he was just kind of stuck in those two boxes of boxer and jiu-jitsu and stuck on his back because of it.
And yeah, and credit to Alex Hernandez's camp with Royval and those guys, because if I were them, I can definitely imagine that they were watching film on the Trey Ogden Kurt Hollabaugh fight, and they knew that he's not going to try and get up. And Hernandez, like, I was like, why isn't he shooting? I would be shooting on this guy immediately. And he took his time setting up good shots, but once he realized he could get him down, that's how he solidified round 3,
I was going to say it was immediate in round 3 going out there. And I think he got to the shot in less than 30 seconds. Like, I feel like in round 2, he was like, oh, that was easy. Let's do it again.
Right? No, 100%. So it's, I love Kurt Hollabaugh. I think he's super fun to watch, but I agree. I just don't think he's evolved here with like such good jiu-jitsu, but not the wrestling to really utilize it at this high level of MMA,
Mm-hmm. Throwback to the Yu Sung Yu versus AJ Cunningham. I'm like, I think I need to have a word with AJ about his nickname, because he's representing the Savages. He is one of the Savages in the UFC. I'm like, come on, bro. Can't be doing the things like, can't be losing like that if you're trying to rep that name, Like, we need to have a talk.
And at 135 deep division, like AJ Cunningham may be finding himself without a job here pretty soon. 0-2 in the UFC. We'll have to see if they give him another shot, So
I'm like,
he can come back.
I'm like, if they don't, then I'm cool with being one of the only. I think there's me, Ramon Tavares, and AJ Cunningham are currently the Savages in the UFC. Any female who comes in, I don't care if she's 135 to 115, I will fight her for the name. But can't do it with those two, so I'm just gonna sit here and just watch from the outside.
And be like, just critique.
Yeah, just critique.
I'm sorry, I saw this question earlier and I was gonna pull it up, and then we kind of moved on from it. Yeah, 2 Kimuras in one night.
I was gonna say, I don't remember the last time I've seen a Kimura. Like, it's been I think like Blanchfield versus Molly McCann, and then I can't say like anyone before that really.
Yeah. That's probably the only one I can think of. And especially in men's MMA, like, I think they're pretty rare. I thought Damon Blackshear, as per usual, looked phenomenal on the ground, but I have to say the better Kimura goes to Brenson Ribeiro, who was down on his back, losing, bad situation, and just sweeping it and still getting the tap. Like, especially at that weight class, like, I think that's incredibly hard to sweep a 205er like that, especially a dude who missed weight by almost 5 pounds. So I have to give my flowers to Ribeiro here. I think he wins the best Kimura of the night.
I think I was kind of going in the same boat of better performance by Damon Blackshear, but better Kimura by, sorry, I forgot his name for a second. Just blanked out. Ribeiro, yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Blackshear had to deal with some adversity too. Cody Gibson looked great in the first round, and then, but Blackshear's grappling is just so, I love how he utilizes that, he like stapled the arm. It's like a weird crucifix kind of, like he doesn't figure four the arm, he staples it, and then it gives him a lot more freedom to move and like scramble with the fighter on bottom rather than like tying himself up in the crucifix. So I really love that position from Blackshear.
I feel like he was able to land some nice elbows from there too, which like from a side control position, you don't necessarily see people doing as much damage necessarily. So he was able to find a way to utilize that position and make it very effective for him.
I agree. And it was almost like Cody Gibson's long gangly arms were almost helping him keep that position because it was just so much for him to like hang on to maintain. And he gives so little space, but manages to do really good damage there. So I always love watching Blackshear fight. He's one of the only guys with a twister in the UFC. Like, I just think he's fun.
The UFC actually posted a picture last night of Korean Zombie, Bryce Mitchell, and Damon Blackshear together. It's everybody who's ever pulled off a twister in the UFC in one picture.
No, that's wild. It's such a, I feel like it's one of those things where you have to almost, it has to be a little bit of luck to end up in that position in an MMA fight. Like, you've got to. It can't be all technique because it's such a difficult thing to set up. It's when I think of the Kimura, I think of Frank Mir. That's fair. If we go back in the day, there were definitely a lot more Kimura finishes. Islam has the one on Dan Hooker. Okay, so there were a few we forgot about. But.
I want to say the most most used submissions in the UFC. It goes for rear naked choke, guillotine, armbar, and then triangle. I want to say, but Kimura's I know Kimura. There's only a handful. And especially in this day and age, like you said, maybe 10 years ago, like 15 years ago, there was more Kimuras happening. But now it's just people are so defensively aware of them that it's not something that, I don't know, it's not something that's necessarily easy to pull off.
No, 100% not. What about arm triangles? I feel like arm triangle might be, is it above or below guillotine in that list?
I want to say it was below guillotine. I can't remember. I had the list on my phone where it was just like the list of every single one, but I just remember rear naked choke being the first because it's my go-to. Yeah.
No, that's definitely the highest percentage. And it's the safest. It's the safest submission. You don't have to put yourself in danger of losing position ever to get a rear naked choke. So, which is nice. G with the RNC at the top of the list, and then her armbar. Definitely for you. Rear naked choke and armbar. Do you have any guillotine?
No, I think that's it. When I was an amateur, I spent a lot more time on my back. I was more of a jiu-jitsu girl. So I have a lot of arm bars as an amateur. And then as a pro, I think I have only like 3 or 4 arm bars. And then I think I have 6 or 7 rear naked chokes. So it's all about the rear naked chokes for me.
I'm with you. I'm all rear naked chokes and then one guillotine. I have one. But I do love the front headlock system. I feel like it's becoming more popular now because everybody's so good and everybody's watching Islam. Like,
I was just gonna say that. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Is everybody's watching people come up for the single leg, go for the Darce, go for the Anaconda. Just like they're watching Islam, and it's the new like calf kick of the UFC. You know, It's the new fad. Everybody's doing front headlock stuff because Islam's doing front headlock stuff.
Well, and it's also like, I feel like it's just such a good game for good strikers. Like, I feel like Luke kind of had the blueprint for a long time where he was an amazing striker, amazing anti-wrestler, and had a killer front headlock system. You know, like those 3 things together make a super dangerous fighter. Like, if I'm Dakota Ditcheva, I'm working my guillotine, my Darce, my Anacondas because people are going to be shooting on me, right? Like, that's a killer combination there.
Well, even like his concept behind it is essentially like the concept I use for my rear naked chokes. Is I'm like, I want to sit on top and punch you in the face until you try to get up. When you try to get up, you give me your back, and then that's when I get the choke. So he just gets it. He doesn't go to the back. He just goes for the head and arm instead. But still the same concept that I feel like I've been trying to apply too. I'm like, just different submissions. We're just in different directions.
Right. 100%. Yeah. No, and he sets it up beautifully. And I think it almost looks, the way he does it, it doesn't look like it should make people tap as fast as it does, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, no.
Like really break down all the pieces of it. It almost just looks inhuman.
He just really understands the positioning of how to follow it through too. Like you saw him versus Kevin Holland. I think he had to like readjust like 3 or 4 times before he had the choke. Kevin was doing a good job defending, and then Islam just knows how to readjust until he's in the right position and it's too late.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We actually didn't talk about him. He uses his lat and core strength, maybe a little. I think it's a lot more technique than you think. Like, yes, Islam is stupid strong, but there's a very specific technique to his chokes, 100%. And he's been doing it for ages. Absolutely ages. Like, you've been doing jujitsu for ages. Like like when you're there, you can feel whether or not you have the position, right? Like, you can feel where it's a crank, where it's a choke, where you're going to get the most pressure, right?
I'm forgetting his name right now, but he choked out touchy-feely. Andre Feely.
Melky Costa.
Yeah, that's how
last time?
Yeah, I'm like, that's how you should look when you're choking somebody out. I'm like, he was not using any kind of strength. He looked bored in his face, and that is just 1000% a technical, like, he could sit there and have a full conversation while finishing that choke because he was just in such good positioning, using absolutely no strength. And I feel like that's what it is when you are that good. It's like you can sit there and do it 100% effortlessly, and it looked easy for him. And that, I feel like it's the same for Islam.
Yeah, 100%. It's a technique thing, guys, I swear. Obviously, Islam is stupid strong, but the way he's making this choke look easy on incredibly high level grapplers is because it's technique, guys. I swear. Promise you. Let's see. Let's get back. We gotta. Somebody was talking about Kevin Vallejos. I don't remember how to say it correctly. The Argentinian fighter. Oh my God, your girl Eileen yeeting the Argentinian flag into the cage at the end. And the commission guy was like, no, you're not doing that. Like, caught it out of his hand, was like, you can't be doing that. But I have to know, do all the Argentinian fighters in the UFC know each other? Because that was so cute. You saw
I think they were all in one room last night, honestly, because they said Ponzinibbio was on the Spanish broadcast, so he was cage side. Then Eileen and Francisco and Kevin there. I'm like, I think every single Argentinian fighter in the UFC might have been in that room last night. I don't know who I'm forgetting.
There wasn't is Esteban Ribovich. I think that's all 5 of them. So that was so cute. They were all there together, like supporting their friends. I was like, this is pretty cool. Supporting their countrymen.
And then obviously with that performance from Kevin too, being a 23-year-old, and like he almost looks like a young Taporia the way he fights. Very in position, like that overhand seemed very calculated. It seemed like he was trying to just set it up with feints the whole fight, drew his opponent out a little bit, and then was able to see that. It was just beautiful performance from such a young guy.
Yeah. And I saw somebody talking about him fighting at bantamweight earlier in the comments. I can't find it. He does look like short, but I think he still looks big. Like, and also Sung Woo Choi, like he's tall and he's long and he's lanky. So I feel like he makes Kevin look shorter than he is, but Kevin was thick and powerful. Like, I think he's found his home at featherweight. I don't know that he needs to kill himself trying to make 135 to be successful in the UFC. But yeah, I thought he looked fantastic. And Choi, like, I felt like he wasn't pulling the trigger as much as he normally would. But he's a dangerous guy. He is 5'7". Kevin is huge. I agree. I think he looked like thick. He just looks shorter than Choi because Choi is super freaking long and fights really tall, you know? But he did look like he was having trouble pulling the trigger. But I think part of that is probably having an explosive guy like Kevin Vallejos twitching in front of you. Like,
I was just gonna say that there was just so many feints. It's like my Dean Thomas, my coach, he always says, keep them on ice skates. You got to keep them guessing. So they're like slipping over. They don't know what you're going to do. And that's exactly what he was doing to his opponent, freezing him up. So he had to sit there and think and be like, okay, what should I do next? Instead of just acting and throwing punches and being an active fighter, he was so just like concerned with, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm interested to see who they give him next. Obviously he's not getting Jean Silva. I know he called him out. Kind of a waste of a call out, to be honest, because obviously that's not happening anytime soon in a division like 145. But I also understand, like, it's his one loss. He had some really good moments in that fight. I think Silva very clearly like dominated the fight, but like Kevin dropped him. Like he dropped him in their Contender Series fight, and Silva has kind of become this boogeyman at 145. So like looking at the featherweight division right now, like who would you like to see him fight? Because we just talked about Costa as another guy who's phenomenal, who's outside of the rankings right now.
Someone just posted, it's so crazy. Joshua Vans, 22, Kevin Vallejos, 23. I'm like, just crazy to see these kids so young, so good.
Talented. Francisco is another one. Prado, like so much talent for his age.
I know. That's the only thing I was going to throw out there about Kevin Vallejos. I hope they don't give him the Prado treatment because of this. I'm like, he's young. He looks good. Don't throw him to the wolves so early. Let him let him build himself a little bit at that stage. He's not ready for, to be thrown to the wolves. He still needs like a couple stepping stones before getting up there. I think I'm not sure who to give him specifically, but I don't think he should be getting John Silva's yet.
Or Joe Anderson Brito, maybe not, like these super scary guys, which honestly, that would actually be a really fun fight, but definitely not a fight we should see from a young contender right now. Like, there's plenty of guys that maybe they do give him like a Feely, somebody who, is a little bit older, but has a ton of experience and is still like very complete, but maybe not as dangerous, as fighting a Brito or a Silva at this point in time. But Costa is is a great contender too. I know I keep bringing him up. That dude is massive. I have no clue how that dude makes 145. He is enormous.
No, I'm like some of these, even so just going to like weight cuts, Ryan Spann up at heavyweight. I'm like, he was almost at the heavyweight limit. I'm like, how is it your first time at that weight class? And I think he was 248 or 249. And I'm like, how are you that big cutting to 05 before that?
Well, and I hate to dog on Ryan Spann, but he also just didn't look great. He didn't look in shape, And so I wonder if he's just trying just to get heavy enough to feel like he should be at heavyweight. If that makes sense. It didn't seem like it looked great on him though,
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I don't understand the purpose behind that. It's like, why should you get bigger? I guess like if you're going to move up, make it because you can't make 205, not like you have to get bigger to be a heavyweight now. But that being said, his opponent, Cortez Acosta, looked absolutely amazing, was on the jab, sticking it hard all night long, and then obviously beautiful finish. I'm like, just an exciting heavyweight fight in 2 rounds, which you don't see often. Usually after the first round, they're done. I'm like, we had 2 rounds that were lively the whole time. And like we said, but the whole prelims, they really prelims gave the main card a run for their money this time.
I agree. And we talked about this off air. Gillian and I were texting each other like, yes, all the prelim guys got bonuses. Like, not all of them, obviously, but all the bonuses went to prelim guys this time. And that's sometimes how it really should be. Like, these guys are usually fighting for 12-12 or 14-14. So to see people get life-changing money when they actually need it, like, is always cool to see. So good on the UFC for making sure these prelim fighters got what they deserve. But this was another point too. Not sure if Spann has the chin for heavyweight. He was taking some seriously heavy shots. And I'll be honest, as soon as they stopped the fight, I was like, oh, that seemed a little premature, maybe. And then when I saw the other angle and just saw how badly he was hurt after they stopped the fight, I was like, oh no, that needed to end for sure.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty fair stoppage. And we haven't even talked about the fourth performance of the night winner, which is Carlos Vera going out there and getting that head kick to rear naked choke.
What a setup.
Absolutely blew my mind that he can't, like, I with the 3 guard pulls before that, did not see that fight ending that way.
It honestly, what a setup. Like, just, I have no words. But it, like you said, these guys all just, like we were saying earlier, these guys all deserve these bonuses. But the round 1 submission, round 3 submission, round 1 KO, round 1 KO. Like, what? Yeah, we were all hating, guys. We were all hating. Everybody was. Don't lie. If you said this card was going to be the banger of the year, you're lying to yourself. You didn't know. We didn't know, but now we do. Now we do. Whoever bet on Carlos Vera made some big money. Was he a decent underdog?
He was the biggest underdog on the card. I know.
Do you remember what the odds were?
No, I just heard the commentators make that comment last night saying he was the biggest underdog on the card when he got the win. I'm like I said, just watching the first 3, however long that fight was, 2 or 3 minutes, I'm like, I could have never called that he would have landed a head kick and almost knocked him out. Obviously was able to jump on the back and get the choke, but dropped him hard with it. Even he hit him with a spinning back kick, I think a minute before that caught him pretty clean too, rocked him a little bit. So just an impressive performance from someone, I'm like, who's a guard puller, I'm like, that's where I come from too. But I'm like, you just don't, I feel like you don't see people doing well with that kind of style in MMA.
Right. No, and maybe he's making the right adjustments. Maybe he just had a killer freaking night,
Yeah.
Like, that happens too. Some people have a bad night, some people have a really good night, but it was just it was exciting all around to watch. But Josias Musasa, good record too, 8-1, solid record. Probably was going into this fight with a lot of people expecting Vera to be a stepping stone for him, So it's always awesome to see that. Vera is a Taekwondo 4th degree black belt. I think he's been training since he's pulling guard out here with his Taekwondo black belt.
I know they were saying a lot about his jiu-jitsu accolades too, and obviously he trains with Ryan Hall, someone who is part of that. Ryan Hall's not a guard puller, but an Imanari guy,
Roller.
Yeah, a roller. Yeah, he still attacks the legs, but not just I just felt like watching Vera, and Michael Bisping made references to his last fight. I don't remember his last fight, but it seemed that there seemed to be a lot of that in the fight before, because he said that Michael Bisping made a comment to him and he got a little defensive about doing that.
Really? No, that's funny. I've got to be honest about Ryan Hall. Typically sport jiu-jitsu guys, a lot of times they don't transition very well to MMA. Ryan Hall won a lot of fights. He was super inactive, but when he was fighting, he did really well.
So he's the one person that I've ever, I rolled with him probably 10 or 20 minutes. We did one round together. It was just never ending. But I feel like he's one person that I've just never felt so, I guess I didn't know what was going on while we were grappling. He wasn't using any strength at all. It was one of the most flow, gentle rounds I have ever had, where it's he was just 100% it was chess. And I was just sitting there no, he's trying to set you up here. No, he's trying to set you up here. No, he's trying to set you up here. It's there was so many things that I'm he is just the smartest, most technical person I've ever rolled with in my life. He was just absolutely next level in everything that I felt was right, I knew was a setup.
That's cool. That's always a cool experience to roll with somebody like that.
No, it was with him, it was absolutely mind-blowing to me. Holy shit, there's levels to this shit. He is just somewhere different when it comes to jiu-jitsu.
That's cool. No, he honestly did train, even his striking game, so awkward, all these spinning kicks, just something you wouldn't expect from definitely not how Kron Gracie fights in MMA, you know? And so it's very interesting to see how he kind of adapted his already bizarre style to an even more bizarre MMA style. I honestly wish we got to see him fight more often,
I know. I would have loved to see him fight again after the Topuria fight. I'm like, because it's like, that's not a bad loss. Like you saw Topuria's trajectory after that. Like Topuria is obviously champ for a reason. I'm like, but Ryan Hall still, I believe he was undefeated before that. Like he was handling guys very well at the highest level. And I think he just really is like, I believe his nickname's the Wizard. He's a wizard, you know? It's like, he was almost like a Danaher before Danaher came around. He was like innovating the game of jiu-jitsu, coming up. He developed the 50-50 guard before like leg locks were like huge, you know? It's like, I feel like he is just, there's not a lot of people who are really like developing things. So many people are just teaching what their coach taught him. He's one of the innovative minds who is capable of developing things and making them work. And I feel like you see it when you're grappling him. You see that you're like, he's made some shit up here that I don't even know what it is, but it works.
This is pure Ryan Hall style.
Exactly.
Let's pull. Okay, Jake had a comment earlier. Should the UFC look after fighters coming out of Tough and Contender Series? They seem to get to 8-0, 9-0, and then throw them in with a veteran of 20 to 30 fights. In my experience, Gillian, you may have a different experience. In my experience, this is a management issue. The UFC's job, like the UFC matchmakers, they have to fill so many cards and they have to find fights for so many people that need money and need to be active throughout the year. Like it's their job. Like, and there's only two. There's two matchmakers for the entire UFC, guys. Like how many hundreds of fighters are on the roster? Or is it like 500 something?
I believe it's almost 700. It's 600 and something.
So almost 700 fighters and two guys have to matchmake for all of them. Like, I think this is primarily a management issue. Like, if you are managing a guy that has 8 fights, like you should be matching your job should be encouraging them to accept fights that help build their career, is my opinion on this.
I say yes and no, because I feel like it also comes with the UFC that they're going to respect you when you take fights. They're going to respect you that you think you can take these fights. And like my coach always says it, Dean, he's like, the UFC is made out of Vegas for a reason. Dana loves to gamble. He wants to see you gamble. He wants to see you take risks and do things like that. And those are the guys, those are the guys that Dana falls in love with. Those are like the Khamzat Chimaevs, you know, who fought back to back at like, I think 10 days apart the first time, where Dana's like, oh shit, like this dude is about it. He's real. Anybody who it's like, you're walking that fine line of taking risks, but like not stupid risks.
Mitigate risk. Yes.
Yeah.
Khamzat did take risk, but he also took 2 very favorable matchups for himself in that 10-day period, right? Like,
well, yeah, it's just back to back for a UFC debut. I'm like, just super impressive coming in the door for Dana to see something like that. And anybody who does make steps like that I guess like sometimes can be stupid, but if they are successful, then Dana's going to fall in love with it. He just loves he loves people who are willing to put themselves out there and try to finish fights and try to go for things, not play safe and just like take those risks.
I think there's guys that it's worked out really well for. And of course, guys who it hasn't, you know, and I think it's like, if we look at some of the champions, some of them came up, you know, very slow. Khabib slow rolled. Khabib was, you know, very developed until and for a long time, people are like, oh, he's not beating anybody. Oh, he's not beating anybody till he beats somebody, you know? Mm. And so I think it's interesting to compare like a career like his to a career like Kevin Holland's, who's probably the ultimate risk taker, right?
Oh yeah, no, and I think that with like fighters coming off the Contender Series, I think there has to be something to be said about the age on how they should be taken care of.
Yeah.
I feel like the younger guys, like maybe don't throw them to the wolves so fast because they still have a lot of time to develop into a great fighter. Where it's like anybody who's close to 30 or over 30, then it's like, yeah, if you're not ready by now, then you're never going to be ready. So they deserve to be thrown to the wolves at that point. Like, you can even look at my career. I was 22 coming in. I took a bunch of losses in the UFC because I just wasn't ready for them at the time, you know? But I'm like, throw me to the wolves. I'm ready for it. I'm going to be 30 this year. I'm like, I feel like around this time is when like you should be ready or you're never going to be ready. So that's why I think like guys like Francisco and Kevin, I'm like, just protect them a little bit while they're young. Let them develop their skills, develop their career, and then like give them like 2 or 3 years. Well, once they prove themselves, throw them to the wolves. Like that's all they have to do. I wasn't able to prove myself until like last year, the year before I started putting the wins together. But I'm like, once they prove themselves, go ahead, throw them to the wolves.
Yeah, I like that. I like that plan, because we've talked about this with like a guy like Francisco Prado probably shouldn't be fighting Jake Matthews, Like, so we've definitely seen it. Some really talented young guys get a little bit too much too soon. But yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. If you're almost 30, like it's your time. You got to sink or swim. But yeah, if you're 21, like let's let these guys develop, which is why the Contender Series should be a year-round show. And they just don't have to sign everybody when they're 21. That's my 2 cents. Have we talked about the main event yet? No, we haven't. And we're going to right now because we have like 5-10 minutes left. So
haven't talked about the co-main event either.
We honestly haven't, which it was good. It was good. It was honestly it was a fight I was more excited for than.
Yeah. I had super high expectations. That was the only fight I had high expectations for. The rest of the card, I had super low expectations for. And that one let me down because of that. Obviously, still a beautiful, beautiful adjustment and beautiful knee for Chidi in the pocket there. But I had such high expectations for that fight, so it let me down.
And it was just because the rest of the card was so freaking good. I agree with what you're saying.
It's who those two guys are too. They are bangers. They're usually exciting fights. So to have just to be the one slower fight of the night just seemed like a little. That's why it let me down.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. And like poor Dos Santos getting literally low kicked kicked in the dick while also getting kneed in the face. I was like, oh, poor guy. Like you just saw the knee make contact and the foot hit the cup at the same time. I'm like, he's gonna have a rough night. Poor guy. But then he landed beautifully. Like you said, good adjustments.
I was going to say, going into the main event and talking about like I guess infractions. I'm trying to think of the right word. But Delize being warned for his fingers being pointed out, then goes back, pokes Marvin in the eye again, and then doesn't get a point taken away. Yeah. I was a little bit put off by that. I'm like, I feel like you already gave him a warning. It's time to take the point.
And for this reason, I just don't think, I don't think eye pokes should, I don't think warnings should exist for eye pokes. Low blows, I have a little bit more grace for because sometimes you just kick at the same time and it really is accidental. But with eye pokes, I think it can change the trajectory of the fight way too much to receive a warning. I know this is my go-to example, but like a false start in football is an accident usually. It still doesn't get a warning. You lose, like you get penalized for it. I feel like if they would immediately penalize every single eye poke, I think we'd have a lot less. Jim Miller was talking about this as well. Like the dude's had more time in the cage than anybody else in the world and has never poked anybody in the eye. And it's like, we should probably listen to this guy as well. I think I don't want to say that it would have changed the trajectory of the fight because I did think Delize looked really good. And I think this wasn't Marvin's best performance coming off of a serious surgery and a really long layoff. He just seemed a little off to me, but we saw a lot of, like you said, we saw continuous reaching. And then there was a moment too that I wanted to see the replay for that I don't think we ever really got to see. I'm not sure if that I just missed it, but he like put both hands out like this to push him and then kicked after. And Marvin was like, literally both his hands went into my eyes. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't see that moment. I'm just like you said, you don't think you should give warnings. Herb gave 2. I'm like, at what point do you take a point if you're just going to keep on warning him? You warned him in the corner when you have his full attention before the round starts. And then it had to happen like less than a minute after that. I'm like, I just feel like at that point there has to be something done. But I do agree with you. I think otherwise Delize did do enough to win. I think he looked good out there where Marvin didn't look his best.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And maybe the eye pokes didn't change any trajectory at all of the fight, but there's a huge possibility for it. And I think the same thing about the cop fight. where I was super impressed with Manel Cobb. And I do think he had the better game plan and looked better than Almabayev. But after going back and watching that fight, the way his fingers literally raked across his eye, like, you have to give some weight to that. If we look at the overall statistics of this, the fighters who are fouling are winning exponentially more than the fighters who are getting fouled. And that shouldn't be the case. So something probably needs to change here. We didn't want to change the gloves. Okay, that's fine. Which I still don't think they gave it a fair shake, you know? I think if you're going to make a change like that and you're truly going to add, like, compare, you probably need to do like a full year with something different so you can compare statistically. And it may just be a fluke that after we've switched back, obviously, completely to the old gloves, we're having a bunch of eye pokes. It might be a fluke, or it may just be the fact that we're not penalizing the eye pokes enough, you know? But some change, I think, needs to be made.
I think with the gloves, a large part of it was just such a pushback from everyone. Like, I know most fighters I talked to didn't like them. Anytime I was at a UFC event, they would ask me, like, oh, do you like the new gloves? I'm like, no, I don't like them. And they would say, oh, everybody says that, you know? So
The staff told Grant it was 50-50 down the middle.
yeah, I'm like,
he's been told at every fight, like, half of them love him, half of them hate him, is what the staff told Grant. But
yeah, like,
it's very mixed.
The general impression I got was that they weren't everybody's favorite.
Yeah.
For me, I like the old ones better. I don't think I've had eye pokes in any fight. I like with Jim Miller, he's had fights in the old gloves and the new gloves. I think it's just a thing about fighting style. It's how you're fighting. You need to be responsible for your weapons more. And like you said, accidents happen, but when you're giving 2 warnings and then you do it again, is it still an accident?
No, I agree. And I think it's, like you said, it's an issue of fighting style more than the gloves, for sure, because I think the people who are more conscious of it are not poking people in the eye. And also, like, people who are long and rangy tend to want to have their hand open. People who fight open stance more tend to want to have their hand open. But it definitely, it needs to be pinned. I think that's the solution to me for every foul. Every foul should be treated severely more harshly, and they would stop. Cage grabs, cool. If you use a cage grab to keep me from taking you down, we get to start down and I get a dominant position.
And that's another one where I think that one's so easy not to do. I've never grabbed the cage once. Even if, like, my hand touches it, I'm like open fingers always. I've never felt the need to grab it. I'm like, I think that's just, it almost shows inexperience on their part. Like, if you are making moves like that.
I've done it. I did it once as like an amateur where but I was in a dominant position and I just, like, out of habit was like, and then I was like, oh, nope, that's not it. Don't do that. But it's the reason you see Yoel Romero grab the cage all the time is because he gets to stay on his feet every time.
Exactly.
You know? Like, if I get to stop a takedown and just get a warning, why would I not grab the cage? You know?
Exactly.
Like, half my paycheck's on the line. Like, I'm probably going to go for it, you know? Not me personally. I'm just saying, like, from the general consensus, if you have the option and you know you're not probably going to get away with it, like, that's the easiest takedown defense in the book.
And yeah, I guess that's a fair point. Like, one of my friends used to always joke. He's like, you always get one free nut shot. He's like, you get one free one, that's a warning. Then the second one, they take a point. But if you need a break at any point, you get one free nut shot.
Which is nuts. It's nuts. That should never be a thing, but it is. It's such a ingrained part of our sports culture. Let's see. If they were the same weight, there weren't a lack of knockouts. We just didn't, there wasn't enough time to actually compare. That's like if I were to conduct a research study and compare results from one group for 10 years and one group for 3 months. Of course the results are going to be skewed. So I just think it was there's 2 things people hate, and that's change and the way things are. So it was just a new thing for fans to complain about, to be honest, because we had fight night cards that had the new gloves, which are now the old gloves again, but the new old gloves, you know, like we had those and we had tons of knockouts on some of those cards. So it's just something to complain about, which we love as fans.
I will say, like, just feeling them, it did feel like there was something a little bit different about how, like, the padding was distributed. I don't know.
Softer or like more pliable, or was it just?
Yeah, I feel like the ones that we don't use now, the new old ones, they seemed a little bit softer. Where the old, like the ones we currently use now, I feel like seem like they are a little bit, I guess, firmer in a way that it feels like there's more padding up front a little bit more, where the other ones feel, I don't know, if maybe the weight is like around.
It's more like throughout the hand.
Yeah, they feel different, definitely.
This is the last comment I'll put up. It's split, guys. It's split. Gillian hates the new gloves. Grant loved the new gloves. Almost all my teammates, I think I had one teammate tell me they didn't like the new gloves.
It's so funny. I'm like, I've heard it the complete opposite. Everybody I've talked to hates them.
Everybody's gonna have a different opinion on them. I haven't fought in either, so I don't get an opinion. So this is just market research, guys.
Honestly, though, as a fighter, at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck what gloves I'm wearing. At the end of the day, like when I'm in the cage, I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, these ones are this and these ones are this. Like, I don't get to wear these. I don't give a fuck. Like, it doesn't matter in that moment. They're really don't make that much of a difference. So like new gloves, old gloves, the fight's going to go the same way regardless.
It's not as big of an issue as I think the complaint is that it's been the same glove for 30 years, which could be a good thing and could be a bad thing, right? We don't know because we don't actually do comparison studies, and we never will because that would require us to change things. But it's like, honestly, I like what Grant said. Grant's like, why? If it doesn't matter that much. Just let people choose. If they like the new gloves, let them fight in the new gloves. They like the old gloves, let them fight in the old gloves. Like, how does that make a difference? How does that change the fairness of the sport? You know?
We have to have it look a certain way, though, for TV.
You can't even tell.
I know. But I bet you that's the reasoning behind it. It's just like they want the uniformity to make it look good and everything, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day.
I wonder if it's the state commission that are just like, no, it has to be the same, because that seems like something Vegas would be upset about.
Because like, well, at least for amateur fights, I know that I was allowed to use my own gloves for a lot of fights where it's like, even actually low level pro, I was able to use my own gloves in some fights, because being a tiny female, all they ever have is they give you like these huge gloves that have been used for 5 fights before you and are just dripping in sweat, and then you go into a fight and both your pinkies fell out of the glove and you're sitting there trying to readjust while you're sitting on top of somebody. It's a lot to deal with. So most commissions, like before I made it to the UFC, let me wear whatever gloves I wanted to wear.
I got to wear my own gloves as a pro once, and it was because all they had were larges, and I was like, there's absolutely no way. And my opponent was like the same. She's like, there's absolutely no way we can fight in these gloves. Like, not a freaking chance. So I had to like borrow somebody else's, because they told us like not to bring gloves. Like, we had to use their gloves. And the state commission was like, yeah, okay, fine. And then I think I had to wear their gloves for one amateur fight too. And it was the same thing. Like, literally you could see like this much of my middle finger, and the rest of my fingers were all inside the gloves. Like, it was the most ridiculous thing ever.
The struggles of being a tiny girl in the regional MMA.
I remember I fought in Florida once. I had to wear shin guards. That was the worst.
I had all my amateur fights in Florida, so I'm like, everything was shin guards always.
Oh, I hated it. Probably great for grappling though. Like,
I know. It's really hard to get like past a half guard when somebody can hold on to the shin guard. So it definitely, I don't know, it stops you in a lot of things.
Yeah, but if you get a lace, oh, they ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, they're stuck.
They're stuck forever. All right, guys, we were gonna talk about Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady next weekend, but we're not, because it's been an hour and 4 minutes. So you'll have to watch the Tuesday show, and we will break it down there for sure. But do you have anything else to add, Gillian? Rate the card for everybody before we go, and then we'll get out of here.
I'll give it. I'm like scared to give anything like an A+, because I unless it gets top. So I'll give it an A. It was a good card. A- card. Like, not like Grant made a good point when we were watching. I'm like, these are bangers. He's like, yeah, but if you don't know any of the fighters, it's like, it's hard to be as emotionally invested in the fights as when you like, you know, their stories and you know who they've beaten and who they haven't yet, you know? So I respect that. That's what I feel like made it more exciting for me, almost, because there was people like Andre Lima, who I only knew as the dude who got bitten. And then now I'm like, oh shit, this dude's actually good. And there was a lot of people on the card that really just surprised me. So they made me interested in them. So I feel like I became a fan of a lot of fighters last night.
I'm in the same boat as you. Yeah. This was like, guys, I wouldn't have watched if I hadn't watched this card. Now I'm going to tune in for regularly, which is how we get new exciting prospects. So I'm with you. I'm giving it an A-. I'm on cloud 9 after this card. Guys, we have got to get out of here. It's been way longer than we've ever talked about fights on a Sunday morning. But thank you so much for joining. Tuesday, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern. That's all I have for you guys right now. I don't know what else is going on this week. We'll have to talk to Dave. But as per usual, we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you later.